Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Much Watching Soho podcast. It's 5 watching Soho now. Time for 5 o'clock tea. Well, that's more like it.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Much Watch in Soho podcast. Here I bridge the gap between English and non English speaking worlds by inviting native English speakers and immigrants to share their insights on cultural aspects of the English speaking countries. This is me, Anastasia, the founder of the English Gaze Project, where we develop and cultivate your English self so that you could go global too. And my very first English speaking guest today is Alex Woolley, the Brit and Instagram influencer. He makes fun educational videos where he tests English teachers' advice on learning the language and proves that they are not always accurate. So we're going to talk about how can foreigners hack the Brits' cultural code and learn to blend in with them. Do native speakers always speak good English? And how good is AI in terms of proofreading? So this is our attempt number 2. Alex, thanks for bearing with me. How are you doing right now?
I'm good. Fingers crossed for this try.
All right, cool. So could you please tell us where you're streaming from?
Sure, I'm streaming from Warsaw in Poland.
Great. And, it's funny because so many people are eager to get to the UK, but you actually left it and moved to Poland. So could you tell us the reason behind it?
Sure. So when I was in university, I always wanted to live abroad for a couple of years, and I thought that teaching English as a foreign language could be a convenient way to do that. So I applied for a lot of jobs all over the world, and I got one. And that one was in Tokyo, so I went to Japan for a year. And then I moved to some other countries as well. And then I kind of sort of ended up in Warsaw without any particular intention to stay longer than maybe 1 year. But, you know, um, I do miss like the UK, and I don't have some kind of story of being horribly traumatized by growing up in the UK, some like traumatic incident with like tea or something. But I just kind of got used to being here. And my honest opinion is that living in most places, your life is not so very, very different. So if you would move to the UK now from some other country, you would probably think like, oh, wow, everything is so historic, so like Harry Potter. Wow, But after a while, you're gonna live in a flat which is not so different from your flat back home. You'll have like a job that probably exists in your home country, in an office. At the weekend, you go for dinner, go to cinemas, see the same films. Like it's not so dramatic.
Yeah, well, I would disagree with you on that because, I mean, where can you actually find, these double taps? Sinks with double taps. I mean, this is rare.
Oh yeah, no, that's unique and special of the UK, but also worse. I mean, it's just worse than every other country.
Right, yeah. All right.
Actually, this,
Uh-huh.
sorry to interrupt, but this actually is an incidence of me like being traumatized by life in the UK and reliving my past trauma like to this day, because I always wash my hands with completely cold water. And I am aware that I could wash my hands with like warm water, but my brain is somehow conditioned that like the two options are like freezing cold and burning hot, and that
Yeah.
freezing cold is the better of the two. So I cannot escape my British habit.
Yeah, that's a tough choice. Boiling hot or cold water. Yeah, always tough choice. Thank you so much. And actually, let me guys tell you a story about how we met with Alex. There was a time when I was making these fun videos about how to learn English, and then one day I log in Instagram and I realized that Alex made a remake on my video, and I'm going to show this video and. Just to illustrate you guys how we met with Alex. So here it goes. Let's watch it together. Stop saying what? There are more polite ways. Come again? Sorry, what was that?
This is true. If your English level is quite low, then if you say what, people will probably realize that you don't mean to be rude. But if you speak at a higher level or you want to improve your English, it would be better to use one of the expressions that this teacher gives you. And if you want to learn some more polite alternatives, comment what. I'll send you a free infographic.
All right, so could you tell me, please, what's wrong with saying what? Does it sound impolite, do you think? And do native speakers say what oftentimes?
Actually, this is a really interesting case because as you're probably aware, in the UK, we have quite a strong social class system, and this has a big impact on how people speak. And what is socially coded as lower class and upper class.
Oh.
So, yes, I know, it's very strange. So, sort of, on the one hand, in terms of the most people you would interact with, it would be associated with kind of like this more vulgar way of speaking. But this is also how like Boris Johnson or the king would ask this question. But in terms of like most people you would interact with, in terms of like your day-to-day life, if you work professionally in the UK, it would be seen as kind of a bit rude, a bit vulgar. As Anastasia said in her video, something like "pardon me," "excuse me," "could you repeat that?" would be better.
Yeah, well, it's funny how you refer to me in the third person.
Right.
Okay, but speaking about this video, I was actually flattered that you tested my advice and you find it legit, and that's probably why I invited you because I felt flattered. Okay.
I'm happy. I'm happy.
Okay, thank you so much. And now let me move on to the next question, please. Right, so you're actually British, but forgive me but you do not sound like one, right? I mean, when we talk about the American and the British accent, American accent is more, comprehensible. Yeah, it's easier to understand, and you are quite easy to understand. So, my question is, did you do something to change your accent? Because I can say that there are some distinct features of American accent in your speech, like your flap T's, for example. So could you give us more details?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my accent is very weird. I know that. But like, okay, so I think if I moved straight to Poland, I probably would speak much more like I did in the past. But I'm from Scotland originally, which is famously hard to understand, even by the standards of the UK. And when I started my first job in Japan, absolutely no one could understand me. And it sounds funny, but actually, I almost lost my job. So I had to learn to speak in this more kind of deliberate, more like clearly enunciated and closer to what people expected kind of way. And then actually day to day now, I really don't speak to other British people very often. Most people I speak to are Polish. So I just kind of got into this habit of speaking this way, and now it's much more natural for me than my original accent.
Right, I see. I guess for an English teacher, it's essential to sound clearly and in a more or less standardized way, right? And it's not the first time that I hear that a native speaker should kind of adjust their way of sounding to to have more job opportunities or something like that. Because when we say British accent, we don't realize that we're not talking about RP, received pronunciation here. Yeah, we are talking about a whole bunch of different kinds of accents.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. All right. And are there any accents for you as a native speaker that are hard to understand? I mean, I saw a funny video where a person, I think from Scotland, was interviewed, and I got the impression that the interviewer didn't get a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, absolutely. I mean, I think one difference between the UK and America is that we have RP in the UK and they have GA, but most Americans speak GA. It's about 70%. In the UK, I believe it's about 15% of British people speak RP.
RP 15. Oh,
I mean,
according to my data, 2.
Hmm?
According to my data, 2% of the Brits speak RP.
Absolutely. I mean, it depends like what you define as RP. Like there's obviously like very precisely RP, and then there's like kind of RP and like moving out in like a bell curve from there. So like where you make the cutoff. But absolutely, a few years ago, I almost missed my train in Birmingham because I could not understand what anyone was saying to me. I would be like, "Can you tell me which platform the train to Edinburgh is?" And they would say like, "No, the platform to Edinburgh." And I'd be like, "I'm really sorry. I'm not being rude, but could you maybe write it down? Like, show me on your phone." So yeah, absolutely. There's lots of accents that are difficult for me as well.
Well, this is hilarious. I mean, we native speakers are sometimes struggling to understand the native speakers, but the fact that native speakers also have this issue, well, it makes us native speakers feel,
Yeah.
more confident about our own skills, right?
The thing I would say is I think people have this perception that you learn standard English, and then as you learn standard English, you're more and more able to understand how people speak. But I think that's not true. I think you have to learn every accent that you want to understand specifically. So, for example, my wife is C2. I really think her English is as close to perfect as is possible for a non native. And when we went back home to Glasgow, she kept asking me what language people were speaking. And it was always English, but I understand because she had never heard people speaking in that way. So, like, being very, very good at understanding people speaking English in a different way just won't help you there.
Okay. Just give me a sec.
Sure.
Right. So if you're a C2 in English, that does not necessarily mean that you'll be able to comprehend any accent. Yes, that's the
Absolutely not.
bottom line.
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you would, as like a C2 level English speaker, if you would move to some part of Glasgow with like a very, very strong local dialect, you would learn how to understand those people much faster than if you were learning English from scratch. But you would still have to go through the process of learning to understand those people in exactly the same way as someone who was B2, A2, doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, that's not really good news we have for you guys. Okay, anyway, thank you so much. And now we are going to, sorry, you were going to say something? No, all right. And now we're going to move on to the next question. And before we do that, I would like to, maybe show another video. Yeah, let's do this. This is actually about learning English on Instagram. Okay, let's just watch this video first.
Hi, how are you?
Please stop saying how are you. It's so boring. How's it going?
I'm fine.
Don't always say, I'm fine.
This makes me feel very...
Stop using very.
But now I feel worried and confused.
Don't say I am worried. Don't say I am confused.
But
Stop always saying but.
I give up.
All right. Could you please comment on it?
Absolutely. So I will start by explaining maybe like my enemy on Instagram, which is the don't say video. So basically, this is maybe not obvious to people who don't do Instagram, but everyone on Instagram would notice. The most important part of your video is the first 3 seconds. That's called the hook. Because most people are scrolling, and depending on how good your hook is, if you have a bad hook, I would say you've lost 95% of people. If you have a good hook, I would say you've lost 50% of people by the end of the first 3 seconds. So that's really, really important. And it has been proven that negative hooks are more powerful than positive hooks. So if you say something like, learn how to do this really cool thing, that's not as powerful as if you would say, don't make this mistake. And therefore, the don't say is a really powerful hook. In my opinion, there's 3 kinds of don't say video. I have like categories. The first, which I'm actually fine with, is the video which tells you not to say something that you genuinely shouldn't say. So we already played your video about not saying what, and I agree. The second is the kind where there's nothing really wrong with what they're telling you to say, and they're not really presenting it as a mistake. They're just saying this more sophisticated alternative would be better. So the classic example of this that you can see many videos on Instagram is don't say very. And I just completely disagree. Native speakers use very all the time. Very is a great word. You know, I say very like hundreds of times every day. And what what frequently happens is that the alternative they give is less common, it's a bit weirder sounding, and it's more specific. So they will say something like, don't say I'm very sad, say I'm maudlin. But firstly, you're going to sound ridiculous if you tell people you're maudlin. It's weird. And secondly, being maudlin is the kind of low energy sadness where you're like, you're not doing very much, you're just kind of sitting there feeling depressed. It's different from the kind of sadness where you're like crying, or the kind where you're like temporarily unhappy. Like, I don't know, it's different from being like temporarily unhappy. So it's a much more specific kind of sadness. And you have to explain that. You can't just say, don't say very sad, say maudlin, everything will be amazing. That's not true. And the third kind, which is the worst kind of don't say video, the worst kind of don't say very video. Oh, fuck. Can you edit that, Anastasia?
Sorry?
Can you edit that part there?
Can I comment on it, you mean?
No. Can you cut it? I mixed up what I was saying. Okay.
Sure. No worries.
Third kind of don't say video, which a lot of apps do, is the kind where they pretend something is a mistake that's not a mistake. So I did a video recently on Instagram where I commented on this video telling you, don't say I made a booking at a hairdresser's, say I made an appointment.
Yeah.
And both of those are fine. Both of those you would hear from native speakers. I'm not even completely sure which one I would use. I think I would probably use both. And this is like a kind of technique where they make you feel insecure about your English. They make you feel like what you're doing is wrong, even though it's not wrong. so that you then feel like you have to learn from them and have to buy their app or whatever other kind of digital product they sell.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree. Just let me process a little bit.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just hearing the echo, but it's gonna be fine. All right. Thank you so much for this analytical work that you've done with this Don't Say
Thank you.
videos.
Thank you.
Yeah. I actually, this reel that you tested,
Mhm.
right? It gained me a lot of subscribers.
Mhm.
So I can actually testify to this theory about the hooks that you've just presented. I mean, yeah, it works. It works. It's very effective in terms of gaining new followers, but probably it's not really ecological, right? And it's probably not very ethical.
I
Okay.
mean, I agree, although I think yours is okay because I mean, I'm not like personally like, I think it's okay to tell people not to say things they genuinely shouldn't say. I just think it's not okay to tell people not to say things that are fine, like very.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to move on to the next topic and talk about the Brits, because as I was saying, in the actually, as I told it in stories, I'm living in the UK and I'm trying to survive in here to probably build some relationships, but it's not running as smoothly as I'd hoped, right? And I want to get your insights on the situation because with the other day we talked with the guys, friends of mine, and they shared that they experienced the same kind of a problem. It's very hard to make friends with the Brits. Why? Because they are very reserved. They prefer to keep themselves to themselves, and they're a hard nut to crack. So let me just share a situation that happened to me and my husband. We decided to invite a family that lives next door, our neighbors, for tea. And by tea, I actually mean pasta. Right. So we invited them for tea, and they said that they would come. And guess what? They never did.
They never
And they
did.
did. They never
Shameful.
did.
Shameful.
They they didn't given us a heads up. All right. So, and actually, it happened more than once with different kinds of people. And I'm starting to lose my hope whether it's even possible to make friends with the Brits. So, what's your take on that, please? How realistic it is to blend in with them?
Sure, absolutely. So it really surprised me when you asked me this question, actually, because I thought we were quite friendly people. But I thought of a couple of possible explanations. So one is that you live in the southeast, which is sort of famously the least friendly part of the UK. So I think if you lived in Liverpool or Glasgow or something, you might have a bit of a different experience. You might find people less reserved and easier to make friends with. The second part is that I think it's always kind of difficult for expats to make friends with locals because, for example, you and your husband, you live your lives in Russia and you have like your friends in Russia from when you were, I don't know, university, high school, whatever. And you have like your kind of established social network. And then you move to the UK. And when you move to the UK, you don't have any friends. So it's natural that you want to like go out and make some new friends to have like a new social network. But the British people are in the same situation that you were in back in Russia. So they already have probably enough friends and they're probably just not that interested in making more friends. I think if you would go to like to Thailand or something where and find like a bunch of backpackers who've just moved to Thailand from the UK, they would be really open to making friends because they would be in the same situation as you are. But you're just like, you have a stronger, as an expat who recently moved to the UK, you have a much stronger need for new friends than the British people who've lived there all their lives do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. So the Brits do have a need for friends then. That's good news.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just mean like, but like, presumably when you were living in Russia, you also were less motivated to find like lots of new friends as you are now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it actually does. Thank you, Alex, for shedding some light on this matter. It never crossed my mind actually. That explains a lot. So the demand and supply, they don't
Mhm.
match. They don't
Exactly,
work.
exactly.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, Alex. And now, could you probably give me some examples of cultural faux pas that immigrants may make in the UK? What would
Sure.
be a no, and what would ruin, the first impression completely, do you think, maybe?
Ruin is a strong word, but in the UK, we are really enthusiastic and we use a lot of strong positive adjectives. And you kind of have to assume everyone is like one level of enthusiasm lower down than what they're saying. So, for example, if I would tell you something is good, that means it's okay. If I would say something is great, that means it's good. And if I would say something is okay, that means it's not really okay. And I think if you come from a country where people say the level of enthusiasm that they actually are, there's a danger that you're going to seem like quite a negative, pessimistic person without really meaning to be. Because, like, if someone asks you, like, what do you think of, I don't know, this restaurant, and you say it's okay, a British person would understand that means it kind of sucks. But like a foreigner might think, okay, it's okay, so I will say it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we're talking about here, I would say, it's indirectness.
Mhm.
Yeah, that is, applicable to the British culture. They are never saying things straight. They're putting things indirectly, not to hurt the feelings, just to soften the message and stuff like that. So yeah, absolutely. We have to, as you were
Mhm.
saying, go one step kind of lower, yeah, to
Mhm.
get the message right. So if you're saying it's a good idea, it means it's okay. If you're saying it's okay, it means it's not really good. But uh-huh.
Sorry, I was going to say about what you said. I think it's important as well to understand that British people don't realize they're doing this.
Yeah.
So when I worked in Belgrade, my boss asked me if I could cover a class, and I really didn't want to. So I said something like, well, I guess it would be okay. And in my head, I was very clearly saying no. And she replied, oh, that's great, thank you. And I was like, what? I said no. But then when I replayed what I said in my head, I realized that like my literal words were yes.
Yeah.
And I think this is how British people understand this kind of social interaction. They don't
Yeah.
understand that they're not being direct.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of an unspoken rule. Yeah. If
Mhm.
you're communicating this idea this way, well, I guess it would be okay. So the person who shares your cultural code,
Yeah,
so that it
exactly.
can decode the message. It's not okay, but I'm trying to sound polite.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it just doesn't work in the direct cultures like
Mhm.
Russian, Polish, I would
Yeah.
say. Yeah, great idea. And Alex, how would you say it in British English? Like, it's a great idea. How would you say it?
I mean, it's a great idea is great, but I would also say it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic would be the one I would use.
Yeah, all right. And what I came across was, well, it's not a very terrible idea, which in British means great. It's a great idea.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, that's funny how the British English works. I guess the Americans are way more direct than the Brits.
Americans
so
are more
it's-
direct, and actually, the thing that makes it hard. Well, there's two things where actually we create social faux pas with Americans, which are firstly, we insult our friends a lot, and Americans don't do that. So, if you listen to British people talking to their friends, they often make jokes about them, and Americans absolutely don't do that. Secondly, a lot of swear words are relatively mild in the UK and much more extreme in America. So it's important to know which words are socially acceptable with them, even or aren't socially acceptable, even if they are for us.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your insights on this. All right. Okay. And let's move on to one more question that relates to the cultural aspect of
Mhm.
the Brits. So could you please tell me your insights behind this topic? What's the secret role of small talk? Sacred. What's the sacred role of small talk, would you say?
So, I mean, when you meet with people, it's good to talk, but you don't necessarily want to have a deep conversation. So, for example, if you are having a business meeting with someone, it's polite, it's like the socially accepted thing to have a couple of minutes of conversation before, which is not about business. But you also don't want to kind of go down anything darker or more serious or anything like that. So the classic example that we love in the UK is the weather, because the weather changes all the time, so there's always something to talk about, but it's not a serious topic. No one has a very strong emotional reaction to the rain. So it's much, much safer than, for example, asking someone about their family, which there could be some kind of difficult situation that they don't want to talk about or that's going to be upsetting for them to talk about. So small talk is just about safe topics.
Yeah. But actually, I want to add on it. I would say
Mhm.
that small talk is also some kind of a cultural ritual.
Mhm.
All right. So it just helps you to break the ice and immediately, um, um, you know, read the person.
Mhm.
I mean, in what mood he's, let's say, how whether he's a foreigner or not, because if he's a foreigner they probably do not realize the function of
Mhm.
the small talk, so it actually gives you a lot about the person you're dealing
Mhm.
with. So and if the person is not able to maintain small talk, I would say that might be a red flag,
Mhm.
because that would probably indicate that it's gonna be harder to get along with them, to communicate with them, because of the cultural differences. So that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. All right. And is it true?
Mhm.
Well, to be blunt with you,
Mhm.
many Russian speakers, they hate the idea of small talk because they do not see the point of it, right? And it's just some, chatting. And we want to get straight to the point. So we don't like this
Yeah.
uh, ritual. We don't. We
Mhm.
are we are not big on that ritual. And would you say that the Brits? Do you think there are any Brits that also hate small talk, or they are completely fine with it, or they love it? So what's their attitude to small talk?
I think a lot of Brits say they hate small talk. I think
Oh
very
my
few
God.
people. Yeah, I mean, I think very very few people in the UK would say like, I love small talk. I want to have more small talk. Nothing but small talk is great. But I also think people are maybe like not as conscious of what is and isn't small talk as, for example, Russians, because for us, it's not something unusual. We don't even realize when we're doing it. It's
So
like
it
actually,
runs automatically.
I can ask like, I don't really know Russian, but like, do you have this distinction between like T and V?
Sorry, T and V?
Yeah, so like if I was speaking to you more formally, would I say like
Right. You mean in T and V. And in
exactly,
English it's
exactly.
you and thou, if I get it right. Yeah.
We don't. In modern English, there isn't really.
Well, in Shakespearean English, I
Sure,
believe.
sure. Let's say Dao. So like the point I want to make is you would use those words differently, but would you necessarily be conscious you were doing it all of the time? Probably not, I think.
Well, personally, me, I think I would, but I'm not a very, you know, reliable example, I would say. But okay, yeah, I got it. So the Brits are taking small talk as necessary evil. So they may not be big fans of small talk as well, but it's still a necessary part of communication.
Sure. I mean,
Right.
I would say like lots of things in communication, in fact, are unnecessary. There's no, in terms of exchanging information, there's no reason why the the distinction has to exist at all. There is no reason why we even have to say hello to each other. It conveys no information. But it would be rude not to. Or, for example, please. It doesn't really convey any additional information, but it would be rude not to include it. I think small talk is just something like that.
Yeah, cultural ritual, right? Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks a lot. And now let's move on to another topic. Let's talk
Mhm,
about native speakers.
mhm,
So the reason I want to bring this up is because a lot of my students they are putting native speakers on a pedestal,
mhm,
and it oftentimes happens when they watch Instagram and
mhm,
follow these English teachers, um, native speaking English teachers,
mhm,
and they tend to actually follow their advice on many things.
mhm,
And as you pointed out before, it's not always this advice is not always accurate.
mhm,
All right. And actually, I want to bring up the following question.
mhm.
Are native speakers, do you think, always good speakers? So, are they gold standard, do you think?
I I think it's a really complicated question, and it's hard for me to give a simple answer. So I would say some percentage of native speakers are really bad at English. So professionally, you probably wouldn't meet them, but some of the people I went to high school with are not even able to do like basic grammar or basic spelling correctly. That I would say is about 15% of the UK population. If we kind of park those people in their own box, then I would say, I don't know. I really don't know. I had a coworker who was Montenegrin, and she lived in East London for a few years and learned how to speak English with an absolutely perfect East London dialect. So not only the accent, but also the vocabulary. She was C2. She was amazing, actually, but she was really hard for to understand because she had such a strong dialect, And I think if she had learned how to speak in a kind of more neutral, more like general American received pronunciation way, it would have been less impressive. It also would have been easier, but it would have been easier for other people to understand.
Right. Yeah.
On
Mhm.
Sorry, just to like finish my kind of convoluted answer. On the other hand, what I see people doing a lot is saying there's only one correct way to say this thing. And in fact, a lot of native speakers would say it in a different way. And there, I think it's correct. I think we should like what is correct and what is incorrect is obviously subjective and it's a value judgment. So I generally go with the principle that if a lot of native speakers say something, it's correct.
Yeah, more or less so, I believe. But okay, let me get my thoughts together. There's one more video that I wanted to show. Um, um, yeah, let's watch it together. It's on the same topic. Are native speakers always good speakers?
Mhm.
Let me share with you how I learned that my English level is A1. First I saw this, and I was a bit freaked out because I always say thank you. But then I just thought that maybe I'm bad at being nice or polite. But then I saw this and started to get really worried. Because I have never in my life said AM sustenance or first repast of the day. I hope you enjoyed this reel. And if not, I humbly beg your pardon and hope to make amends for my wrongdoing.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Right. So the question that I had in mind was, yeah, I think I lost it. Could you comment on the video, please?
Absolutely. So this is basically about how on Instagram you see this a lot. Basically, there's this idea that more complicated is better. And I just don't think this is true at all. If you look at the reel I was reacting to, all of the sort of A1, A2 level language in the reel is really normal stuff you would hear from native speakers, from C2 level speakers, from educated native speakers as well, all the time. And then it gets weirder and weirder and like more Shakespearean and more extreme as well. Like,
Sorry.
if I knock over your coffee or something, I'm gonna say I'm sorry. I'm not going to like humbly beg your forgiveness because I'm not that sorry, Like I'll get you a new coffee, but like that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the advanced English that we talk about here, it is not actually that kind of English that you'll find on Cambridge Dictionary marked with C1 and C2.
Mhm.
No, the advanced English is colloquial, so that the English that native speakers use.
Mhm.
For example, I didn't see that coming, the phrase itself. I
Mhm.
didn't see that coming. It's pretty, well, it has very basic words in
Yep.
it, right? But it sounds colloquial. It sounds really,
Absolutely.
really
Absolutely.
natural.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one thing people learn is more complicated adjectives in particular, but actually nobody uses them. What people use, as you said, is like more idioms, more combinations of basic words, but in ways that have a different meaning. Like I do.
Yeah, this is actually a lexical approach to teaching we are talking about.
Mhm.
So this approach gained popularity in the 90s, I believe, and it was coined, the term was coined by Michael Lewis,
Mhm.
and it actually claims that the key part of language learning should not be grammar, but
Mhm.
lexis.
Mhm.
So we should at any time focus on lexis because these constructions, like I didn't see it coming, it has built-in grammar.
Mhm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yep. And if we focus on collocations, so
Mhm.
these phrases with built-in grammar, this will
Mhm.
help us expand our vocabulary
Mhm.
immensely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, thank you so much. All right. Now we're almost there. Just a couple of more questions
Sure.
left.
Sure.
All right. So just summing up the
Mhm.
videos that I showed you, the reels that you filmed. What's your verdict? Can one learn English effectively through Instagram?
Yes, I think you can. I mean, I think the thing is that if you would, for example, go to the British Council and learn English, then you would be using textbooks that the British Council have considered and have approved. And you would be learning from teachers that have also gone through some kind of checks to make sure that they're good. And that would be the same at International House, at any of these prestigious schools. But it's not true at all on Instagram. On Instagram, anyone can say anything. You know, I'm like myself, I'm just like some random guy who makes videos with my iPhone. So I think it's really important to kind of find who to trust. But I also think there are a lot of really good teachers on Instagram creating a lot of really valuable content, which can help you learn a lot.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on good teachers, specifically, especially
Mhm.
native English, native na- uh, native English speaking teachers. All right.
Mhm.
So, I want to comment on this. Right. I do not believe that any native English speaking person can be a great English teacher. All right.
Wow, you're
Because
going hard.
yeah, let me explain me, please. Myself. Let me explain myself. Let's take me. I'm Russian, right?
Mhm.
This is my mother tongue. Doesn't mean that I'm a good uh, that I can be a good Russian as the second language teacher. No,
Mhm.
it absolutely does not, because I can use the language, but it does
Mhm.
not guarantee that I can teach the
Mhm.
language. And I'm speaking about Russian here
Mhm.
because it involves methodology of teaching. Without methodology, you're just a user of the language, you're not a
Mhm.
teacher. Okay. So, what I believe every native speaker should have if they teach, uh, some, methodology knowledge. So,
Mhm.
what do you think of that?
I completely agree. You know, before I so this could surprise a lot of people, but in the UK, we actually don't learn English grammar in school at all. And
Wow, that's a revelation.
yeah, I know it's shocking to people, but we have the subject English, but we learn about literature. And in university as well, the English subject is about literature. So getting an A is about being really good at interpreting Shakespeare or Joyce or something like that. It completely does not matter what you know about grammar. So I did a TEFL certificate after I finished university at the age of about 22, I think. And until I did that certificate, I genuinely believed there was three tenses in English: past, present, and future. And I was shocked by how many there were. And my cousin is 11 years younger than me. So he also just recently finished university and did a TEFL certificate. And it was exactly the same for him. He was shocked that there was more than three tenses in English. Obviously, my cousin and I were using every tense correctly, but we had no idea they existed. Now, I completely agree that native speakers need to learn teaching methodology and they need to learn English grammar so that they can explain it as well as so they can use it.
Yeah.
But I think English teachers have a very big advantage as well, which is vocabulary. Um, and also, as native speakers, even if we can't say why, we have a kind of sixth sense of whether something is correct or it's wrong, which I also think is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me just ask you an additional question about that grammar part. So the impression that I got is that native speakers and non-native speakers, when it comes to learning English, they studied they studied different kind of grammar, right? So native speakers think that there are three tenses, right? Whereas non-native speakers are learning 12 tenses.
Sure.
Okay, all right, funny.
Yeah, but I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure why we should learn English grammar if we're not going to be English teachers, because we don't need it. We can use English fine without grammar. I mean, like, would you learn in school like the mechanics of walking? It's pointless. I mean, I don't know how to walk. Like, I can walk, but like if someone asked me, describe step by step how you move your legs, how you shift your weight across your body, what you do with your upper body, I have no idea. But like, it's fine. I can still walk. And I think it's the same for native speakers. Unless you're going to be an English teacher, you actually don't need to learn English grammar.
Wow. Okay, thanks for that. So the impression that I get from what you just said is that you being a native speaker can actually skip the analytical phase, the analytical stage, and obtain the skill right away. So you just take it naturally
I mean,
without.
if you want to be an English teacher, you absolutely have to learn how grammar works so that you can explain it to other people. But, you know, I've studied English grammar so that I could be a teacher, but it's not like my English grammar got better after I understood it. It was exactly the same. I was able to use it correctly before, and I was able to use it correctly after.
Wow, cool. Yeah, it's gonna. I believe it's gonna be mind blowing for some of the guys, non-English speaking guys. Okay, thank you so much. And my last question is, let's talk about AI. So how good do you think it is in terms of proofreading? Can we completely rely
Yes.
on the AI
Yes.
now?
Absolutely. I think, I mean, personally, I think Grammarly is better than most proofreaders, including me. In a few-
Grammarly, the
Grammarly,
app.
yeah. But not only Grammarly, like every AI proofreading tool, I think, and I will explain why. So, firstly, AI is much faster than humans. Obviously, if you try to get something professionally proofread, you send it to an agency which finds a proofreader who then will do the work, who will send it back to the agency, who will send it to you. And that takes a couple of days. With AI, you have it done in a few seconds. Also, obviously, it's much cheaper. But also, people have this idea that AI makes mistakes, but humans also make mistakes. Most proofreaders are paid by word count or page count, not by time. And therefore, the faster you work, the more money you make. So you, as a proofreader, have a big incentive to prioritize proofreading quickly over proofreading well. Secondly, a lot of proofreaders are not native speakers and may not have perfect knowledge of English themselves. Even proofreaders who are native speakers may not have even proofreaders who are native speakers may not have perfect knowledge of that field. So if you would ask me to proofread or to translate a medical document, I would really struggle with like the specific terminology in my first language. And the I'm sorry, I had a third thing. Just cut this.
Okay.
Okay.
So you were saying you would be struggling with the terminology in your native language.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the last part I was going to say is that English punctuation is also very difficult for native speakers. Most native speakers have no idea what to do with commas. So I think the level of accuracy now of AI is similar to proofreaders, higher than a lot of proofreaders, and it's a much more cheaper and convenient tool.
Great. So AI can replace proofreaders.
Mhm.
That's your verdict.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. I feel sorry for the people who are gonna lose their jobs. But yeah, let me add on it. I'm also using Grammarly, and
Mhm.
I would say that I'm not as excited as you are
Mhm.
about Grammarly. I honestly prefer ChatGPT.
Fair enough, fair enough.
So yeah, with a correctly written prompt, you can get your style fixed. You know,
Mhm.
formal, informal, semi-formal style. You can get it done at no time. Then you can get your grammar fixed and then it can give you some recommendations on how to rephrase the sentence, the text, the word. So yeah, AI is definitely great in terms of proofreading. Um, Better than Grammarly, I would say, in my opinion. But yet
Absolutely.
again, I still have to check
Mhm.
after ChatGPT or any other app that I'm using because sometimes it doesn't sound natural. I wouldn't put it this way. It's not the way I usually sound.
Mhm.
So I still proofread
Mhm.
after AI.
Sure. But just to add one more thing, which is that every year AI gets better and human translators and proofreaders stay the same. So even if AI were slightly worse right now, in a couple of years, it will still be better.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Actually, I have asked you all the questions that I had. Is there something you would like to add, or is there a message that you want to share with the guys?
Sure. So something I try to get across in my videos, I think this is important, is you are not going to stop making mistakes in English. And therefore,
That's
you
bad
should.
news.
No, it's fine. You need to accept it. And once you accept it, you can stop beating yourself up about it. Like, it's not a realistic goal for almost anyone to stop making mistakes. A lot of people think they know non natives who don't make mistakes, but they're wrong.
Are
I
you saying that native speakers make mistakes as well?
Sure, native speakers make mistakes as well. I make mistakes when I'm tired. Everyone makes mistakes, so don't worry too much about your mistakes.
Yeah, yeah. And the main message from the videos that you're
Mhm.
making, for me personally, is that you're already good enough to speak English. So just
Exactly.
stop beating yourself up, right?
Exactly.
Just
Don't
chillax.
hold yourself to like unrealistic standards like zero mistakes or native speaker accent, which are not achievable for almost anyone. Nobody cares. Just do your best. That's fine.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Alex, for coming.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Sorry about the technical
No, no
issues,
worries. Thank you for having me. It's been
but you
great.
were brilliant. I enjoyed our talk.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so
You
much.
too. Okay, see ya.
Yeah. Just a sec. I'm going to finish the stream here.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.